Hillary Clinton is doubling down on her statement that young people are misinformed by the news on social media at the recent Doha forum. And this is not a good look for Hillary Clinton. It's also not a good look for the Democratic Party. And I think people need to pay attention to what is going on here. I would say the reporter tried to give her a bone, tried his best to get her to admit that her statement was incorrect, right? That she was wrong. But no, she persists to double down here, folks. You got to see this for yourself. Also, at the same event, journalist Aaron Mate from the Gray Zone confronted Hillary Clinton. You guys have got to see this. Let's go ahead and bring it in here. Shout out to Dropsite News. Hillary Clinton doubled down at the Doha Forum on remarks she made last week at the Israel Hayom Summit, where she claimed that young people who were pro-Palestinian have been propagandized and misinformed by social media. Moments ago, she said young people are getting an incomplete picture of the conflict. So let's go ahead and get into this video here, folks. Like I said, the reporter really tried his best, I think, to give her a bone. Not a good look for Hillary Clinton. Listen to this.
I want to talk about you now. You've been in the news this past week for some comments you made at an event in New York organized by the newspaper Israel Hayom. And I'm going to paraphrase here, but you said that smart, well-educated young Americans are getting their news from social media and from TikTok. And you went on to say that this is how they're learning about what happened on October 7th and then what happened in Gaza in the months that followed. And it appears that this was a broader lament on your part about declining support among Americans for Israel. That comment has generated a lot of controversy, and it's led Congressman Ro Khanna, for example, to point out that I don't think the answer is to disparage the intelligence of young people. It's been a few days now since you've said that. How are you reflecting on your words and the controversy around it?
Yeah, that's a good point to mention. Ro Khanna did say that. So like she has members of her own party that called her out for her statements there.
Well, I think it is a provable fact that most Americans and an even bigger percentage of young Americans get their news from social media. If that is controversial, then people are not paying attention to how...
Is that a bad thing?
I don't know if it's a bad thing, but I think it's an incomplete...
Well, let me rephrase this.
They should be listening to you, Ravi. I mean, obviously.
People do listen to me for what it's worth, and I am also on Instagram and TikTok.
Oh, slow burn. That's a brutal one, right? So here's the problem with people like Hillary Clinton. They are stuck in the past. They are stuck in the past. A lot of people nowadays, a lot of voters, especially younger people, are not prescribing to this old style of politic that Hillary Clinton, people like her, Nikki Haley, George W. Bush, Mike Huckabee, they are not prescribing to that neocon style of politics. A lot of voters today, especially younger voters, are anti-war. They're tired of these wars. And Hillary Clinton herself seems to have forgotten that Barack Obama ran on an anti-war message when he ran for president. Barack Obama said we need to end the wars in the Middle East. Now, obviously, he didn't stick to that because he went on to kill people in Libya. But she should know this, right? Like, it's common sense that people are moving away from that type of energy that I think both parties have become accustomed to over the years. So the problem with people like Hillary Clinton is that she doesn't step outside her bubble to see that, yes, more people are engaged in news on social media, but also reporters like the one who is interviewing her here is also doing news on social media. That's what happens when you don't step outside of your bubble and you're stuck in the past. And that's what it is. Hillary Clinton, Nikki Haley, these neocons, they are stuck in the past. Let's go on more here.
But I guess the broader point here is that if Americans are shifting in their views about Israel, and poll after poll shows that that is the case, that is based on some information that they're getting, not just from social media, but also from very reputable journalists
Right.
operating in the region, also Palestinian journalists in
Right.
Gaza.
Yep.
Why is that not accurate?
I'm not saying it's not accurate. I am saying that I teach at Columbia University.
Pause. No, she was saying it wasn't accurate. That statement that she made at that summit hosted by Miriam Adelson, that statement, what she was saying is that the information that they're receiving on social media, that it's incorrect information. That is exactly what she was saying. Hillary Clinton is making herself look even worse. And I think what is going to happen ultimately, I think a lot of people are moving away from people like her. I think a lot of voters, they're moving away from the Hillary Clintons, like the Bill Clintons, even Barack Obama. People have been moving away from him too. People are looking at the future. These young people are looking at their future. And when they look at their future, they see a future that is grim because they see that they can't afford to put a down payment on a home. They see that they can't afford to start families. And they see that the US government is spending all this money creating chaos and war abroad. That's what they see. Yeah, she teaches at Columbia University. And how did you get that gig, Hillary? We all know Columbia University is a Zionist institution. How'd you get that gig? Because you went along with the status quo. You went along with the propaganda. You went along with the pro-Israel propaganda. That's how you get your career. You spoke at AIPAC conventions. You chose to still support this genocidal state that is Israel. And those atrocities did not start after October 7th. They've been going on for decades. So that's how you got that seat. That's why you're there. Because you toted the line. Ay, ay, ay.
And I teach a course called Inside the Situation Room. And so it's a very large course. I co-teach it with the dean of the School of International and Public Affairs. And so I've had many, many conversations with very smart young people, not just Americans, but literally from around the world.
And it's worth pointing out that Colombia, of course, has been a center of some protest and action.
And it was.
On this issue.
And I talked to students there. I've talked to students elsewhere. And in talking with them about their views, they were certainly entitled to those views based on whatever information they had. But they did not always know why they were saying what they said. And all I'm asking for is that people have a historical context, both for...
Pause. Let's get into the historical context. So that has not been my experience because I worked at the university system for over 10 years, right here in the Boston area, in Boston and in Cambridge. I worked at MIT. I worked at Harvard, attempted Harvard. I worked at Northeastern University. I worked at Boston University. And let me tell you what I found. I found that those students not only understood the historical context, which is that Israel is an illegal occupation. They understood that the Zionist movement came in and pushed the Palestinian people off of their land. They are very much aware of what took place. And that wasn't taught to them at the university. That was based on research of their own. So they are aware. So from my experience, I never got that impression that they didn't really understand why they were saying what they were saying, right? A lot of the people who were protesting were college students, right? And Hillary Clinton should know about this because she at one point in time was a protester as a college student. She's another example as someone who was an activist back in college that the establishment got their hands on and said, we're going to put you into politics and all of that jazz. So one of those people, just like Van Jones, right? Just like Barack Obama, like these were people that were protesting and were active in college, and then later on went into politics and went along with the very establishment that they were protesting against when they were students, because they wanted to get paid and they wanted power. So what if people go back and they say, Hillary, when you were protesting for women's rights, when you were in college, you weren't always informed. So think about those things.
what has happened to the Palestinians and what has happened to the Israelis, because we are not going to implement the 20-point peace plan or any other peace plan unless people come with some sense of historical perspective and empathy about how we're going to move people toward what I still believe is the only realistic outcome, a two-state solution.
You cannot have that type of outcome with an occupying power, right? We are not moving towards a two-state solution because the Israeli government doesn't want the Palestinian people to have their own state. Hillary Clinton knows this. I've played videos on this channel years ago when she was Secretary of State having those same conversations with Benjamin Netanyahu back then. So she's gaslighting the viewers. Everybody who was there at that event, she is gaslighting them. So that is not what is happening here. First thing to write down. Second thing here to write down. An occupying power does not have the right to defend itself. That's international law. So the whole idea that Israel even has an Iron Dome and what they're doing to the Palestinian people is against international law. If people look this up, they will see this for themselves. So they're an occupying power. How can you have peace with an occupying power? How can you have empathy for the Israelis in Israel when they are the ones who are occupying the Palestinian people? What empathy are you talking about? Israel has control of the land, the air, the water. The Palestinian people don't have control. So until you get to that point, which she won't, until you get to that point where you call out the fact that the occupying power is wrong, this whole conversation that she's having here is pointless. And the reason why she does not point the finger at Israel is because she sold out a long time ago. She sold out to AIPAC, to other Israeli lobby groups. She is one of their puppets. So she's not going to call them out and that what they're doing is wrong, that occupying people is wrong. And they've been able to get away with this for a long time. Politicians in this country have been able to convince people and get away with this for a long, long time that we need to support and back Israel. And it was October 7th that really woke people up to what was really going on. I met people who didn't even know what Gaza was until after. So this style of politic that Hillary Clinton and alike are used to is dying. And they find themselves in this sort of struggle to figure out, well, what do we do now? What do we do with this? Now, she goes on to talk about human rights abuses, and that's the hilarious part. Listen to this.
And we're not going to get there if people, you know, when they say from the river to the sea, and you say what river and what sea, and they don't know, which has personally happened in conversations that I've had. I just, you know, but this is a larger issue because
now she's trying to say the reason why you're not going to get to a two-state solution is because some people don't know what river they're talking about, or because of the rhetoric that has been said. She is totally lying here. The reason why you're not going to get there is because the Israeli government does not want the Palestinian people to have their own state.
Because even on other matters in this class that I teach, we are not doing a good job teaching history. We're not giving young people the kind of context that I think they need to be decision makers.
So now she's saying that the history classes are to blame. It's interesting because when I was in school, I didn't learn anything about the Palestinian people. We learned a lot about Israel, but I didn't learn anything about the Palestinian people. They damn sure didn't teach us that they were occupying them. They didn't teach us about the annexations that are happening, or the land theft and, you know, the homes that are being stolen in the West Bank. We didn't learn about that in history class. So if history needs to be taught differently, Hillary, it is in that respect that people need to be taught about the Palestinian people and what happened to them. That's what needs to be taught. She's struggling here, and it's very obvious.
All due respect, and I can't gauge how well young people grapple with history, but what I can speak to is they're grappling with the here and now. and they are witnessing images that are live streamed, that are coming out every day. And yes, there is misinformation and disinformation, but a lot of it is real. And I think there's a genuine anger in the United States and around the world, that some of that anger is deflected.
But Ravi, I'm angry about all of the human rights abuses. I'm angry about all of the excessive use of force. I'm angry about, what happened on October 7th in Israel and what happened in Gaza. I'm angry about what Russia's doing in Ukraine. I'm angry about Sudan. I'm angry about the Eastern Congo. I mean, I think we should be all looking at the tragedies and the conflicts that are bringing about so much suffering.
And who's behind all of that, Hillary? Who's behind all of that suffering that you're talking about? Because I brought on an expert talking about Sudan, and he made it very clear that that has to do with Israel too. Because Israel wants land there. So who's behind all that? Because I would say the US government and the policies that people like Hillary Clinton have supported have caused a lot of that suffering that is happening across the world. The US government has, I would say, just committed atrocities across the world. Imperialism, overthrowing leaders. Who's behind those human rights abuses that she's referring to? All these different coups. I mean, there was the coup in 2014. She's talking about Russia and Ukraine. Let's talk about who was behind that. The US government and NATO. So you're not serious if you're saying that you're against these human atrocities that are happening across the world and all this suffering when you back the government and the policies that cause that suffering. And that's what Hillary Clinton has done and is still doing right now. So you're so angry about what's happening in Gaza. Why didn't you lead with that? Because she's not. So here she is again lying. They're all in on it. All of these politicians, most of them, had agreed to the Greater Israel Project. And you cannot have the Greater Israel Project without the complete destruction of the Palestinian people, without stealing Gaza, without stealing the West Bank, without going into Syria, Lebanon. You can't have that without those things happening. So Hillary Clinton, George W. Bush, Bill Clinton, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, Joe Biden, all of these people supported the Greater Israel Project. And all these years, they have been gaslighting you by making you believe that a two-state solution was on the way. Imagine standing up and fighting against the apartheid in South Africa, but being okay with what Israel was doing to Gaza.
And be dealing with them. That's why the national security strategy is not to my liking, because I think the United States has an important role in trying to resolve these conflicts and alleviate the suffering and give people a chance to have peaceful, prosperous lives. That
the US government caused the suffering. This is hilarious to me.
That should be our goal. That is in America's interest. I don't care where in the world you are. So, of course, the suffering in Gaza is horrific. Full stop. Suffering everywhere is horrific. So let's look at what we can do to try to resolve, what is being done to people in so many different settings right now. And
you do that by ending the US relationship with Israel and stop sending them aid and weapons, etc. That's how you do that. That's how you know she's being disingenuous. Now she's just talking out her ass.
I think that the emphasis on one terrible conflict sort of doesn't do justice to the challenges that we are confronting. And I don't want to see my country basically say, you know what, you know, those other presidents, they tried to resolve conflicts. They tried to stand for democracy and freedom. They stood up for human rights. What a waste of time. That is, to me, an abdication of leadership. And I want to see us involved everywhere, trying to stop the kind of horrible abuses that are going on.
Us being involved everywhere is what led to those horrible abuses. She really thinks that people are stupid.
I'm with you in all of that. I think the argument we often hear, of course, is that America has a different role in the Middle East. Of course, it supports Israel and therefore is complicit to a degree. But I want to draw a line from all of this to 9/11 and America's misadventures after 9/11 and the war in Iraq, the war on terror. And one could make the case that at some level, America's been unable to maybe curb Israel in this particular case, or even impose its will and talk about values and rules and norms and conflicts around the world, in part because it too has skirted rules and norms in several instances in its history. Is it your sense now that we're entering a world where the rules and norms don't matter as much? And what can the United States do?
Look, I think it's an interesting analogy, because when a country is attacked, and as you know, I was a senator from New York on 9/11, so I was deeply involved in dealing with families who had lost loved ones, dealing with the people who had been grievously injured, dealing with the, you know, horrible cleanup and everything we had to do in Lower Manhattan. That is a traumatic event. And people don't always make the best decisions post-traumatic events. You have to understand that. And I'm not sure that, you know, that was well understood after 9/11 in American decision making. And I think you can see other examples of that, obviously. That's part of the reason why we established all of these norms and laws after the Second World War. You know, when you talk about how the rule of law, how the expectations of militaries in combat are supposed to be judged, all of that was an effort to try to construct a system that could rein in bad leaders like Vladimir Putin, who wants to dominate and destroy his neighbors, leaders who are traumatized by horrific events and therefore lash out and may not be, restrained and acting the way that they should.
Everybody noticed what she just did there? So when it came to calling out leaders, she called out Vladimir Putin by name. And she said over what he wants to do, which Vladimir Putin has vehemently disagreed with that multiple times, but what he wants to do. But when it came to calling out leaders who have used too much force, which she's really talking about Benjamin Netanyahu, she doesn't mention his name. She says leaders that have done that. So the gaslighting is embarrassing. And it's so obvious what is happening right here, right now. You can say Vladimir Putin's name, but you can't say Benjamin Netanyahu's name. And you're calling out Vladimir Putin over something you said he wants to do, but you can't say Benjamin Netanyahu's name over something that he has been doing. And that's how you know that Hillary Clinton is a part of that same energy, that same neocon complex that she says we need to fight back against. We need to fix the suffering across the world. She's revealing herself right there. I'll let her end it here, and then I want to show you what Aaron Mate did.
That's part of why we constructed this whole system, to move away from norms and laws in the international system will only benefit the worst actors in the international system, whether.
Yeah, this is bad. I'm sorry. Like that is absolutely embarrassing. Horrible take there from Hillary Clinton. Like I said, you are a part of the past and people are moving to the future. So Aaron Mate was able to confront Hillary Clinton.
Hi, Secretary Clinton. Secretary Clinton, can I ask a question? I'm a journalist with the Gray Zone. Can I ask you, you said at the Israel Hayom Summit that young people are brainwashed because of social media. What about young people who just don't want to see U.S.-made bombs kill Palestinians? Any message for them? No. Okay.
See that?
Hi, Secretary Clinton. Secretary Clinton, can I ask a question? I'm a journalist with the Gray Zone. Can I ask you, you said at the Israel Hayom Summit that young people are brainwashed because of social media. What about young people who just don't want to see U.S.-made bombs kill Palestinians?
Notice how she's ignoring him? Instead of Hillary Clinton being on that, Aaron Mate should have been on that stage. Journalists like him should have been on that stage instead of this crazy woman who just won't seem to retire and just go away. Because people like Aaron Mate, people like, Ryan Grimm shared this. They represent the new, not the old. And this old way of thinking, and this is why I think, the Republican Party and the Democratic Party right now, they are struggling to figure out how to deal with this Israel issue. Because it's not being received the way that it used to. And there's no way getting around this. People don't forget a genocide happening. You just don't really forget that. Just like people didn't forget about the casualties in Vietnam. So she doesn't want to talk to Aaron Mate because he's not considered the respective media. He's not corporate media. He's independent. So she don't want to talk to him. And that is part of the problem. She complains about people getting their news from social media while not going into the spaces where a lot of young people are getting their news. Tell me how that makes sense. Tell me how it makes sense. This old way of doing things. Oh, pay attention to CNN, Fox News, MSNBC or MSN Now, whatever the hell they are now. Pay attention to those media. That's what we're going to do. We're going to go talk to those people. That way is dying. And Hillary Clinton, people like her, are not willing to move forward. Even Barack Obama understands this. That's why you saw him going on podcast. And she don't want to answer that question. So she ignores him and is just walking away. And that is part of the problem. So kudos to Aaron Mate for being able to confront Hillary Clinton. He's getting a lot of praise here in the comments. That was me, the one with the clapping there. Professor Zinkas said she insulted and condescending to students in the school at which she teaches. What a trash thing to do. Israel Exposed says legend. Dissented News says asking the Clintons about Jeffrey Epstein and the U.S.-Israeli genocide in Gaza. Yeah, it just, these people, man, these people, times are changing and they don't know how to deal with it. So one of the ways they're going to try to combat it is just say it's misinformation, but even people aren't falling for that. The gall of that woman to double down. That's definitely not the future. Hey guys, this was a Sabby clip. If you like what you saw, hit that like button and subscribe.